Hello, and welcome back to another video. What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel. So EA just dropped the patch notes for the August 2026 update, and there's a lot to unpack here. This one's going live on August 6th, and I gotta say, some of these changes are things we've genuinely been asking for since UFC 6 launched. So let's just get right into it. I want to walk you through everything that's changing, and then at the end, I'll give you my honest take on whether this is a step in the right direction or not. So let's go. So first off, EA opens up this blog post basically saying they've been listening. They call out the health and stamina, perks, flow states, and the number of knockdowns specifically as things that the community has been vocal about. And look, if you've been following my channel or even just playing this game for the last couple of months, you already know that these are the exact topics that have been blowing up all over X and Reddit. I mean, it is what it is, right? So it's good to see that they're actually addressing it instead of just staying quiet. Let's start with the health and stamina changes because there's a good chunk of updates here. So first, stamina cost for missed and evaded strikes is going up by 10%. So basically, if you throw a strike and it whiffs or your opponent slips it, you're going to pay more stamina for that mistake. And the reasoning here is based on the community's feedback of stamina feeling too abundant and that there hasn't really been enough of a reward for actually outplaying your opponent. So now, if you make someone miss or you evade a strike, they're going to be more gassed, and that means your counters are going to hit harder because they're already low on stamina. Honestly, I like this. This rewards actual skillful play instead of just spamming strikes with no consequence. Next, they're decreasing long-term stamina recovery between rounds by 10%, so the between round recovery isn't going to be as generous. And what this is supposed to do is open up more of a strategic layer where you want to survive those earlier rounds against spammers and power punchers, let them gas themselves out, and then turn up the pressure once they're tired in the championship rounds. I actually think that this is a great change for high-level strategic gameplay as long as we're not losing the option of first-round KOs. We still need the game to play like a fight where anything can happen, even in the earlier rounds. Now here's a big one, and I know a lot of you have been waiting on this. They're decreasing the number of stuns and knockdowns required to actually build into a knockout or a leg TKO. Head accumulation is changing by 20% and leg accumulation is changing by 30%. So basically, fights were going on way too long with way too many knockdowns before someone would actually go out. And I remember this has been a talking point since like the second patch of this game's life cycle. People have been saying fights feel like they drag on forever with knockdown after knockdown and no finish. So the fact that we're finally getting this adjusted months later, it's honestly a relief. This is one of those things that was highly anticipated, and I'm genuinely glad it's finally here. Now to be clear, they did say this doesn't affect flash knockouts. This is purely about the accumulation knockouts, so keep that in mind. And then the last stamina related change, they're decreasing long-term body damage by 10%. So basically body TKOs and body health dropping has been happening way too fast, and EA actually broke down why. Faster combos coming from UFC 5 to UFC 6, the new strike variants making body strikes way more versatile, perks and flow states stacking bonuses, and better defensive options that protect the head more than the body. So this nerf is meant to kind of balance all of that out, which makes sense to me. Alright, so moving on to perks and flow states. They're nerfing a handful of flow states across the board. Stinger's going from plus 45% damage down to plus 40%, same for stun damage. Tiger's dropping from 30 to 25% on both damage and stun damage. Point down is getting adjusted on basically every stat, damage, stamina cost, retreating penalty, the whole thing. And electric eel is getting a pretty noticeable nerf too, dropping from plus 35 down to plus 25% on stand-up and clinch damage. They said these flow states were letting fighters stack damage bonuses multiple times within a single combo, which was leading to some pretty easy, cheesy, big damage outputs. So reeling that in makes sense for competitive balance. They also fixed the feather step perk, which apparently was letting fighters retreat way faster than it was supposed to. That's getting corrected back down to the actual listed value in the training manual, which is plus 5%. And they fixed a bug where stamina was regenerating during submission triangles if you had the last stand flow state stayed active, which if you've been caught in a sub against someone using that, you know how annoying that was. And then there's a handful of smaller gameplay fixes. They fixed the push action, which apparently just wasn't working for some players. They improved the fluidity of head movement animations so fighters shouldn't look like they're swaying twice when they only actually swayed once, mainly affecting ducking. They fixed an animation bug with the backpack position. Dominant Cruz is getting some new signature moves, a long rear overhand and a long lead overhand, and they fixed an issue where camera shake would just stop working after your first match in online modes. Okay, so that's everything that's actually live on August 6th, but EA also gave us a first look at what's coming down the line, and I do want to touch on this because it's important context. They're working on a fighter reach update where shorter fighters are going to get a more meaningful damage advantage at close range instead of just nerfing reach or speed for taller fighters like they did back in UFC 3 and 4. They're updating movesets across the roster to better reflect real fighting styles, mainly hooks and roundhouses. There's a fix coming for the flying triangle denial window, which is apparently way shorter than it's supposed to be. They're looking into the over-under clinch entry range being way too generous. They're investigating ground game responsiveness, so fighters not reacting fast enough once a fight hits the mat, plus those annoying hanging fakes when you try to cancel a transition. There's also an update coming for what the community has been calling bobbleheading in ground and pound, which is like basically evading like it's gonna be a straight and then still blocking it when it turns out to be a hook. And finally, they acknowledge the online connectivity issues, the slowdowns and freezes people have been dealing with. But here's the thing, and I want to be really clear about this part. EA straight up said several of these, the ground game stuff, the bobblehead fix, the connectivity issues, are going to require multiple updates because of how quote unquote complex they are. They don't have a timeline for any of it. So let's get into whether I think this is actually a good update or not. On the surface, yeah, this is a good patch, genuinely. A lot of these changes, especially the knockout accumulation change and the stamina rework, are things this community has been asking for basically since launch. And I want to give credit where it's due. Some of this stuff was teased or hinted at in previous patches, and it was highly anticipated by basically everyone. So I am glad that we're finally getting these changes. It shows that they're listening, and mechanically, I do think that these changes are going to make fights feel a little better and more skill-based. But, and this is a big but, I do want to talk about the bigger picture here. Because when you step back and look at what this update actually is, it's still a fundamentals patch. We are still, months after launch, adjusting core things like stamina, knockout thresholds, and flow state balance. Those are foundational systems. And it's a little bit concerning to me that we're still this deep into fixing the basic bones of how this game plays when we're also supposed to be looking ahead to actual content. We know there's a new game mode expected to drop by the end of the year. We know people want new content, new features, new reasons to keep playing, but EA themselves admitted in this very post that some of the biggest issues, ground game responsiveness, the bobbleheading exploit, online connectivity, those are going to take multiple updates to even address with no clear timeline. So my honest take is this: I'm happy with the direction of this specific patch. These are good changes. But I can't ignore the fact that we are still fixing fundamentals this far out while content is supposedly coming down the pipeline. That's a little worrying, because if the core gameplay experience is still this unsettled, still needing this much foundational work, then how much bandwidth does EA actually have to deliver quality content on top of that? We're basically being asked to be patient on two fronts at once. Wait for the gameplay to get fixed, and wait for meaningful content to show up. And that's a tough spot to be in as a player who just wants a complete, polished experience. So yeah, good patch on paper, but there's still a long road ahead, and I think we all need to keep our expectations tempered until we actually see how the rest of this year plays out. Anyway, that's my breakdown of the August update. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Are you happy with these changes, or are you also a little concerned about how much is still left to fix? I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye.